Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Distinguished guests, excellencies, colleagues, and my friends, Assalamu alaikum. I think most of the people here might know the Maldives as a holiday destination. But for me, this is home, and this is where I grew up. This is where I have my friends and family as well. We are about 1,200 islands, and an island nation battling with climate change as well. But for us to move towards building a resilient island nation, to adapt to the impacts of climate change, we need to invest in our people. And that means investing in education, investing in healthcare, to build a resilient island community. In our islands, most men leave home to work in the resorts or to be on fishing expeditions. And most islands are left with women, children, and the elderly. And this is why I emphasize why we need to invest in education, healthcare, to be able to adapt to the impacts of climate change as well. Our islands are dispersed, and providing healthcare and education is a huge challenge. We are a small island country, but we are also a very large ocean state. And building a healthcare facility and a school on every island is a big challenge. Regardless of these challenges, we have succeeded to build healthcare facilities and primary schools and secondary schools on every single island. And this is an achievement we have reached thus far. But building a resilient country, and the only way for us to adapt to the impacts of climate change, is investing in human beings and preparing our young people for the future and for the future impacts of climate change as well. We have come a very long way. We have been able to provide free higher education to our students. And just 2 years ago, the government started this program. We have also started to provide breakfast to our students, which has been stopped due to COVID. And the reason why we started a student breakfast program is because we started to realize that many students were going to school without having breakfast, and that was having an impact on their learning. Today we have over 10,000 students enrolled in our national universities, but this doesn't come without its challenges as well. I think this is why I'm speaking here, to be able to build partnerships, to share our knowledge, to share our experiences. Is we understand that it's not just the numbers that matters, but to be able to invest in quality education, to be able to develop quality programs for us to help us address the challenges that we face, because we are also an emerging democracy as well. And for us, investing in healthcare is, again, an important issue. As I said, our islands are dispersed all across the country, and providing healthcare, we can't build a tertiary hospital or facility on every single island. Just right before COVID hit us, we had actually started to roll out a program to decentralize healthcare services in the country, and we had started to invest in atoll in regional tertiary hospital facilities. And this is what saved us during COVID, when the entire country was under lockdown and we could not transport, people could not come to the capital city to gain tertiary healthcare services. So I want to emphasize how important it is to invest in decentralization of healthcare services and public healthcare and primary healthcare services. We have reached over 90% of our population has been vaccinated. 99% of our tourism employees have been vaccinated, and we were able to open our country just after 3 months of lockdown. And this is why we have recovered from the impacts of COVID as well. And some of the tools that we used during COVID is we depended heavily on technology. And the technology portfolio falls under my ministry as well. And this happened during COVID. And I think the reason why we need to understand how important role technology plays in both climate adaptation as well as building societal resilience in a country like the Maldives, where the population is so dispersed across many islands. For us to, we have embarked on a very ambitious journey to invest in technology and digitalize our economy, to depend on technology and digital technologies for development as well as for climate monitoring. Some of the things that we are doing in the Maldives right now is working to introduce digital ID, to integrate data within government institutions to be able to make smart and evidence-based decisions for our development policies. Parallelly, we are also working on improving our legislative framework while we are embarking to develop our digital ID, is to introduce data protection and privacy laws as well as cybersecurity laws, because we understand how important it is for us to protect our people as well as build a society that is dependent on digital services. In conclusion, I want to reflect on the work that we are doing, on how important both climate change, building social resilience, building a future generation that have knowledge, and to be able to rise up to the most defining issues of our times, which is climate change. Most of our islands have run out of fresh water. Our islands are eroding at an alarming rate. Sea level rise is impacting our islands. But I don't want to always talk about the doom and gloom. I want to say that I want to continue to live in the Maldives. I want all of you to be able to come holiday in our islands as well. So for us, conservation is a development tool that connects jobs, that connects income, and that connects building the resilience of our societies. It's a pleasure to be here, and I hope you have a very interesting and insightful panel discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency. And I'd like to thank our esteemed guests and Excellencies for being patient with us and joining us as well for our final panel discussion. I'd like to invite Ms. Isobel Abulhoul, Chief Executive Officer and Trustee of the Emirates Literature Foundation, Mr. Clint Brown, Director of Product Engineering, Esri, and Ms. Claire Casey, Global Head Policy and Insights, Economist Impact. Our final moderator, of course, is last but not least, Mr. Samer Costantini, Director of Communications in the Middle East and North Africa region at Schneider Electric. Mr. Costantini has more than 20 years of experience in communications, policy making, and corporate affairs. Before moving to Schneider Electric, he has served the UAE federal government for 10 years, where he advised on competitiveness, policy reforms, SDGs, and statistics. I leave it to you, and of course, please be mindful of time.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I wrote good morning, but it's actually good afternoon now because we ran over time. And just a little note, there is no way that we can upstage the previous panel, with the surprising and delightful visit by His Highness. However, no matter how short this panel is, we will make it both exciting and insightful. Our topic is going to be on societal resilience. Resilience has been a word that has been kept being mentioned over and over and over again since the beginning of the day. However, from our perspective, societal resilience, simply put, I mean, I'm sure you can agree, is how fast or slow communities can bounce back or recover, after going through adversity or difficult times. However, what we would like to do, hopefully within the coming few minutes, is shed some light on very interesting questions and topics. Specifically, is our societies expected to be resilient? Coming from a survival instinct, or is it something that we instill? I would like to maybe open up with that question to everyone. Probably I'll start with you, if you don't mind, Casey.
Thank you. I might broaden the frame a little bit to how we talk about resilience at Economist Impact. So we use a framework of three definitions of resilience: rebounding, which is that recovery that you spoke to; robustness, how strong is the underlying system that enables us to weather the crisis. As we've seen in COVID-19, they can last a long time. So how robust are our systems? How resilient are they to continue to provide services in the midst of a crisis? And then the third element, and I think that's the one that is really interesting for us today, is strategic resilience or sustained adaptability. So are we learning as we're responding? Are we looking over the horizon to optimize our systems and develop new structures so that we are more prepared after a crisis than we were in it? And I think if you look at the COVID-19 pandemic, you see those three categories really coming out. So we understood when we go through a crisis like this, when our system is stressed, the fragility and the weaknesses become very clear. And we saw in our societies that our ability to respond was limited by the strength of our health systems, but also the health of our population. So the incidence of non-communicable diseases, as an example, heart disease, diabetes, obesity, actually really shaped the outcome. So in the health community, what we're seeing is a lot of people thinking about how do we optimize our approach to the provision of healthcare to take a whole human approach. And there's a lot of conversation around value-based approaches to care versus volume-based approaches of care, and looking towards that over the horizon, next generation issue. How can we optimize the system so that we're better prepared and we're more resilient next time? And that's really exciting. And exciting things are happening in education as well. So I think we heard some of that earlier today.
Absolutely. Speaking of education, and I know, Isobel, you are in the Global Council on Education, but I want to ask you a question that relates to a very personal experience, I would say. You are the face of the Emirates Literature Festival, an iconic landmark in UAE's cultural scene. However, and please correct me if I'm wrong, the Emirates Literature Festival was literally the first in real event to be organized, if I'm not mistaken, after the COVID restrictions were gradually being relaxed and we were still being administered, the vaccines. And if that is not a call for, bouncing back and recovery, I don't know what is. If I may ask you, where does that drive come from?
Passion. I think everything that I've ever done in my life is driven by passion and the influence that the United Arab Emirates had on me. This is a can-do country. We talk about societal resilience. When I first came here in 1968, it was not the country we see today. It was before the birth of the Emirates. So water was very scarce. No water was wasted, no food was wasted, there was nothing that was wasted. As an example, I have a tin, a baby rusk tin, which is 50 years old, which I used to store, they're called dried lumiyabis, so they're dried lemons. I took it back to Cambridge on my first holiday because I needed it for the flavour of Emirati food. It's still there. So this is a society that had huge resilience, and I believe, because I came here and I was quite young, I was influenced by that. And what I believe I learned in those times was, I came from a country where you turned the tap off and you wasted water. There was a river running through Cambridge. Water was plentiful. I came to somewhere it wasn't. And that's one of the lessons I took from here. So I've always believed that living in Dubai, there is always a way. It's not about, oh, I can't do it. It is, what is the solution? You turn left, you turn right, you found a way. They had a saying in Arabic, and I can't remember it completely, about all roads. You would drive in, when I came to Dubai with one road, so you could take any direction and you would end up somewhere. So education and a passion for reading is what's driven and single-mindedly. So we've never missed a festival. We just had our 14th. We did not think the pandemic and COVID was going to stop us. We found ways, we moved outside, we had social distancing, we used all of the wonderful writers who were here, and we used technology to bring in Elif Shafak and Amin Maalouf and all the other great writers who couldn't travel. So Dubai, the UAE, is about always finding a way and a solution. And quality education I've received here.
Very well said, Isabel. And I just want to stop on the point of technology and maybe, go back to you, Clint. Since you represent the IT industry, I would say, on this panel, His Excellency Mohammed Al-Gargawi yesterday in his opening remarks said that humanity in the past 10 years or I would say technology has progressed more than the past 100 years. And in the past 2 years, the period where we went through the pandemic, it has evolved or progressed, more than the past 10 years. Now, my question is here. Is the industry going way too fast? Because clearly, we are leaving people behind. If you look at the disparity in the technology sort of, ubiquitous, I would say, if you look at it from an umbrella perspective, it's not there. And that sort of negates with the whole notion of the Sustainable Development Goals, is that we're not leaving anyone behind. Are we moving way too fast?
Of course. Of course for us old people, right? But I think what's interesting is if you look at our children, they're all digital natives. How old is your child when they start swiping their parents' phone? They're 1 year old and starting to use technology. And what I think is real interesting about what you were just talking about is if we just imagine 5 years from now, who's going to be entering the workforce? Those are students in high school. Right now, they'll either go to trade school or start a job or go to college, but it's only 5 years till they enter the workforce. And kind of just looking at that, like, okay, some of us are old, some of us aren't going to be able to kind of cope with new capabilities. I think there's a lot we should do for that community as well, but the other one is just train this kind of next generation of professionals, because I think they're going to they're really going to hit limits in their lives, in the world, and learning how to live sustainably, or learning how to kind of give back, how to recycle in ways that we've never thought of. Things like that, I think, are on the horizon. And my sense is that this younger generation could be really interesting in contributing to that.
So I'm getting all sorts of nods that we need to wrap up. So I'm going to try to close it with one question to everyone. From your area of expertise or domain, what is that one thing that can be done, for example, in the area of policy, or in the area of technology, or the area of education and culture? What is that one thing in each of your perspectives that could really boost societal resiliency? So I'd like to start with you, Claire, if you don't mind.
I'm going to echo what we heard over and over again today, which is evidence-based decision-making, and evidence-based decision-making has to be based on data and measurement. And so we live in a sea of data. We don't make great use of all of it, but it is a tremendous tool for policymakers to make smart choices, to develop systems that are resilient and responsive to the needs of their citizenry. So the more there's an expression, we manage what we measure. So measurement, which is the core of what we do, I think is something that we need to really have a laser focus on going forward to have more resilient systems.
Well, I think building on evidence-based decision-making would also be the notion of it needs to be global. everybody should have the opportunity to be participating with technology and tools. It's interesting how technology has always evolved to a point where it's kind of available for us at the times that we need it. If you look at phones and how they're just kind of taking over computing, with your phone you can connect to the world everywhere, even in Africa. The people are doing a lot with even our advanced tools and technologies in their own communities. Jane Goodall has a process called Takare, take care. And it's really based on this idea of conservation, but it's also about kind of community participation and enablement. That idea that those communities need to eat, they need to be fed, they need calories, they need those things. And so that idea that there's this kind of holistic view of the world, and I think that's what's really fascinating about the SDGs. In our parents' generation, GDP, we have one, and we still all have one measure that everybody knows. I think in a decade it's going to be a whole series of indicators coming out of the SDGs.
Isobel?
I think for me, it's about showing in practice what quality education is by drilling down and putting a spotlight and making a school or schools work by not throwing money at it, but looking at the leadership of the school, looking at the three bodies. So you've got parents, you've got teachers, and you've got students. How can they together develop a beacon of educational excellence? So once you prove and you record that and you write down everything that works and what doesn't work, you empower the teachers, then you should be able to upscale that model, you know, school by school, because, you know, from top down, you can issue edicts, you can issue curricula, you can do all of that. But are you changing it at the surface? I don't believe so. So that's what our council are focusing on. And I am so grateful that I have so many wonderful experts, from writers to Arabic language experts to visual experts, who will be able to join hands and make a difference. And then we will say, this is what works. Let's make it, let's grow it across the thing. And a huge thank you to His Excellency Abdullah Nasser Lutar, who has inspired all of us. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Very well said. So measurement, making sure we go global, and quality based education. With that, I thank you for your patience. I thank all the attendees and the audience for their patience. Apologies for running this very short, but it's been brilliant. Thank you so much. Thank you.